Imagine losing everything you love. The ground that seemed firm crumbles, and you find yourself at rock bottom, without hope, without anyone. Now imagine, in the midst of this emptiness, a hand reaching out to you, a chance to start again, but also to face the ghosts of the past. This is the story of Liz, a woman scarred by pain, and Alex, someone willing to defy the world to prove that she deserved a second chance. This story will touch your heart. Before I continue, can I ask you something? Like the video, thank you. The rain was falling hard on New York, forming glistening puddles that reflected the flickering streetlights. Alexander Carter was walking alone, his hands buried in his coat pockets as drops ran down his face. He had refused a ride from the driver after an exhausting meeting. He felt suffocated, as if the screams in his mind echoed louder than the sound of horns in the distance. He wanted to run away, but he didn't know exactly from what. As he walked through the streets of a neighborhood he would normally avoid, the weight of his choices and the emptiness he felt seemed to grow with every step. The hurried faces around her became indifferent blurs. The shop windows flashed irregularly, reflecting a cold, impersonal glow. The smell of wet asphalt mixed with the aroma of street food, but Alex didn't notice any of it. He was trapped inside himself, in a whirlpool of thoughts that transported him to distant places where memories of a simpler life waited for him like ghosts. Despite having achieved what many would consider everything, money, success, and power, Alex felt an emptiness that was impossible to fill. And that night, under the weight of the storm, that emptiness seemed more unbearable. As he turned a corner, he stopped abruptly. On the sidewalk, almost hidden in the shadows, was a woman. Her body was huddled under a threadbare blanket, and her hands were shaking as she held a plastic cup. Her hair dripped wetly down her face, partially concealing her features. There was something disturbing about the image. Alex had seen scenes like this countless times, but never with this impact. He tried to look away but couldn't. Something was holding him there. Without knowing what he was doing, he moved closer. The woman didn't raise her eyes. She seemed oblivious to the world around her, as if the rain was just another layer of indifference that she already knew so well. Every detail of that scene seemed to cut Alex in a way he couldn't explain. She was different. There was something about her, a strange familiarity that made him shudder. "Are you all right?" Her voice came out hesitantly, almost inaudible in the rain. The woman didn't answer immediately. When she finally raised her face, her eyes hit him like a blow. They were deep, full of something he couldn't name, a mixture of pain and emptiness. Alex felt his heart squeeze. For a moment, he was speechless. The woman stared at him for a few seconds before pulling the blanket tighter, trying to protect herself not only from the cold, but perhaps from his gaze. Alex hesitated. One side of him told him to move on, not to get involved. But something deeper, something primal, made him stay there. He opened his mouth to speak, but a male voice interrupted him. "Do you need any help, sir?" It was a street vendor offering an umbrella. Alex shook his head, pushing him away. When he looked back at the woman, she was already getting up, clutching an old bag that seemed to contain everything she owned. She began to walk, her steps slow and faltering. Alex stood still, fighting the feeling that if he let her go, something important would be lost forever. His mind screamed that this was absurd, but his body had already decided for him. Without thinking, he began to follow her. The rain seemed to intensify every step he took. The woman walked slowly, as if she were carrying the weight of a lifetime on her shoulders. Her thin, trembling figure was slowly moving away. Alex noticed the worn-out shoes that barely protected her feet from the cold ground. The bag clutched against her chest, as if it were her last refuge. Every detail seemed a cruel reminder of the gulf between her life and his. She stopped in front of a narrow, dark alley. Without looking back, she walked into the gloom, disappearing into the shadows. Alex hesitated. What was she doing? He didn't know what he expected to find, but something urged him on. He took a deep breath and followed her. The alley smelled of garbage and damp, and the sound of rain echoed off the narrow walls. He found her sitting on the ground, protected only by a makeshift tarpaulin. Her hands were intertwined, and her eyes seemed fixed on a distant point, as if she wasn't really there. Alex felt a lump in his throat. He approached slowly, trying not to startle her. "Excuse me." His voice came out lower than he had intended. "I just wanted to see if I can help." She finally faced him, her eyes glazed with exhaustion and disbelief. "Help?" His laugh was bitter, almost painful. "Do you think you can help someone like me?" "I don't know." He hesitated, feeling more and more out of place. "But I wanted to try." She shook her head slowly, as if she was used to pushing people away before they had a chance to hurt her. "Go away. There's nothing here for you." "You look familiar," he said before she could stop herself. For a moment she was still, then she looked away, her shoulders tensing. "You're mistaken. What's your name?" The question came out before he could think. She remained silent for so long that Alex thought she wouldn't answer. But then, with an almost imperceptible sigh, she said, "Liz." The world seemed to stop. Liz. The name hit him like a wave, bringing back memories he had buried for years. He remembered the girl he had known in childhood, the friendship that had blossomed into something more, the promises broken by her disappearance. Alex felt his heart race. "It's you," he whispered, more to himself than to her. "Liz." She stared at him, and for a brief moment, something in her eyes seemed to change. But then she looked away again, standing up with difficulty. "You're wrong," she repeated coolly. "I'm not who you think I am." Alex felt the truth in every fiber of his being. It was her, but there was something she didn't want to reveal, something that kept her trapped in that place. He wanted to beg her to trust him, but he knew he couldn't force her. All he could do was watch as she picked up her bag and began to walk away. "I'll find you again," he said, almost without realizing it. "I promise." Liz didn't reply, just disappeared into the darkness of the alley. Alex stood there, the sound of the rain drowning out the rapid beating of his heart. He knew that something extraordinary had just happened, something he couldn't ignore. And above all, he knew that he had to find her again. It wouldn't be the last time. The rain had subsided, but the sky was still heavy, reflecting the maelstrom inside Alex. He went home that night, but he couldn't sleep. The figure of Liz, the name that haunted him, filled every space of his thoughts. It was impossible to reconcile what he had seen with the memories of the vivacious girl he had known years ago. How had she gotten to that point? And why had she disappeared without a trace? Over the next few days, Alex found himself returning to the same neighborhood, walking the streets with a watchful eye, looking for Liz. He knew it was irrational. New York was too big, and what he was doing bordered on desperation, but he couldn't help it. Something in him refused to accept that woman disappearing from his life again. On the third night, he saw her. She was sitting on a park bench, her shoulders slumped, her gaze lost. The dirty blanket still wrapped around her, and the old bag remained in her hands. Alex stopped at a safe distance, watching her for a few seconds before approaching. Every step felt like a test of his resolve. He knew he couldn't force her to listen to him, but he also knew he couldn't ignore his feelings. "Liz," he said her name as a whisper, a word that seemed to carry all the weight of lost years. She looked up, and for a moment, he saw something in her eyes. It wasn't just tiredness or pain. It was a gleam of recognition, a spark that she seemed to want to extinguish. "You again?" Her voice was hoarse, tired, but there was no surprise. "I couldn't stay away," Alex admitted. "Not after I found you." Liz laughed, but it was a short, bitter laugh. "Do you think you can save me? That a random encounter will solve anything?" "I don't think it's that simple," he said, his voice firm. "But that doesn't mean I won't try." She sighed, clutching the bag to her chest. Her eyes drifted to the floor, as if she was trying to decide whether it was worth continuing this conversation. "You don't understand," she said at last. "There's no fixing it. There's no going back." "Maybe not," Alex retorted. But that doesn't mean you have to face everything alone. Liz looked up again, and this time there was something else there. Vulnerability. Alex felt his heart squeeze. She looked so fragile, so close to breaking that he was afraid of saying the wrong thing. But he also knew he couldn't back down now. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice lower, almost a whisper. "Because you were important to me," said Alex, honestly. "And I think you still are." Liz stared at him for a long moment. Her eyes were watery, but no tears fell. She seemed to be weighing up his words, trying to decide whether to believe him or push him away for good. Then, with an almost imperceptible movement, she shook her head. "I don't know how to start," she said at last, her voice breaking. "I don't know where to start." Alex took a step forward, but kept enough distance so as not to press her. "You don't need to know," he replied. "You just need to take the first step. The rest we'll figure out together." She took a deep breath, her shoulders shaking slightly. For the first time, she didn't look away. There was something in her eyes, a tiny spark that seemed to resist the darkness. Liz didn't say anything, but she didn't move away either, and for Alex, that was enough. "Are you hungry?" he asked, changing his tone. "We can find somewhere to eat. That's all. No rush." Liz hesitated, her fingers gripping the bag tightly. Then finally, she gave a small nod. Alex felt such intense relief that he almost wanted to smile, but held back. He knew that this was only the beginning. They walked together to a nearby cafeteria, a simple and dimly lit place, but warm and welcoming. Alex ordered 2 bowls of hot soup and a coffee for Liz. When the food arrived, she began to eat in silence, while he watched from afar, giving her space. It wasn't much, but it was a step. As Liz finished her soup, Alex noticed that her hands were shaking less. There was still a long journey ahead, but he knew that her choice to accept that small gesture of help was significant. He didn't have all the answers, but he was willing to face them with her. That night, in the dim light of the diner, Alex realized that the Liz he had known was still there, hidden under layers of pain and scars. And as he looked at her, he saw something he hadn't felt for a long time: hope. The air in the small diner seemed heavy, dense with the words Liz had just spoken. Alex watched her, his eyes fixed on her, trying to find something, anything, other than the pain that dominated her every gesture and expression. As much as Liz tried to close herself off, it was impossible not to see the fragility in her trembling hands, in the way she clutched the bag to her chest as if it were her last anchor. He knew he couldn't push her any further that night, but he couldn't let her disappear again either. "I know I can't change what happened," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "But I can listen, and if you let me, I can be here. Without expecting anything in return, I just want to be here." Liz didn't reply, but her shoulders relaxed a little. Alex decided not to say anything else for the moment. He discreetly ordered her another coffee and remained seated, respecting the silence she seemed to need so much. As he looked at Liz, an old memory began to form in his mind, clear as a good dream you never forget. They were sitting in a sunny park on a spring afternoon. Alex, then 16, was laughing while Liz, 2 years younger, was chasing a colorful balloon that had slipped out of her hand. She complained loudly about the wind, while Alex, with a teasing smile, said it was her fault for tying the balloon so loosely. Liz, stubborn and full of energy, wouldn't let it go. "If you know so much, why don't you help me?" she shouted, panting as the balloon rose higher and higher. He got up, still laughing, and ran alongside her, even though he knew there was no chance of catching the balloon. When they finally stopped, both exhausted and panting, Liz looked at him with sparkling eyes and a wide smile. "You're a disaster as a teammate," she joked, nudging him lightly. "Maybe," replied Alex, still smiling, "but you'll never get rid of me." That afternoon they sat under a tree and talked for hours about their dreams, their fears, and everything they would do when they were grown up. Alex had never forgotten that day. There was something about Liz, a light, an almost fierce determination that made him believe she was capable of anything. And now, years later, sitting in front of her again, he barely recognized that girl in the broken woman in front of him. Liz noticed Alex's distant gaze and frowned. "What is it?" she asked suspiciously. "I was just remembering," he said with a sad smile, "how you were always so determined. Nothing could stop you, not even stubborn balloons." For a moment, confusion flashed across her face before being replaced by something softer. Liz looked away, but Alex saw the corner of her lips curve slightly in an almost imperceptible smile. "Do you remember that?" she murmured, as if talking to herself. "How could I forget?" he replied. "You ran like the world depended on it." Liz shook her head, and Alex noticed that her eyes were a little brighter. "That was the last time I felt free," she admitted, her voice laden with melancholy. "You still can be," said Alex firmly. Liz sighed, crossing her arms on the table as if to protect herself. "It's not that simple, Alex. You don't understand." "Then help me understand," he asked, leaning forward slightly. "I'm not here to fix you or to bring back the past. I just want to help you find something, anything, that still makes sense." She was silent for a long time, staring at the table as if his words were too much weight to carry. Finally, Liz took a deep breath and looked at him. "You shouldn't care so much about me," she said, her voice lower, almost hesitant. "I care because you care," he replied. "Because years ago, you taught me to believe in myself. And now, it's my turn to be here for you. It's not about what you've lost or what I feel. It's about what you can still be." Liz blinked rapidly, as if trying to hold back tears. She didn't say anything, but something in her posture changed. It wasn't complete acceptance, but a small chink in the armor she had built up over the years. "I can't promise anything," she said at last, her voice wavering. "You don't have to," replied Alex with a slight smile. "One step at a time." She nodded, almost imperceptibly, and Alex knew that something had changed. It wasn't a victory, but it was a start. As they walked out of the diner together, Liz by his side, he felt a small spark of hope. The night was cold, and the wind still carried the smell of rain, but Alex knew that even with all the difficulties, he wouldn't let her fall alone again. Liz still carried deep scars, but now there was a chance, however small, that they would begin to heal, and he would be there, ready to help her every step of the way. As they walked in silence through the soaked streets, Alex felt Liz's weight beside him, almost as if her presence carried an invisible burden, but one that was impossible to ignore. He said nothing. The silence was dense, heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was as if she needed that space to organize her thoughts. Liz stopped suddenly. Without warning, she sat down on the curb, ignoring the dry sidewalk next to her. Alex hesitated for a moment, but then knelt down next to her. "Do you want to tell me what's weighing you down so much?" he asked, his voice low but firm. She stared at the street for a few seconds before shaking her head. "You don't want to know." "I do." Liz took a deep breath, her body trembling as she tightened her arms around her own body, as if trying to stop something inside her from shattering even more. When she finally spoke, her voice was hoarse, as if each word was an effort. "I've been destroyed, Alex." She laughed, but there was no joy, only despair. Little by little, like a building that collapses brick by brick until there's nothing left. Alex remained silent, respecting her choice of how to tell it. "After my mother died, it was as if the ground disappeared. I had no one. I lost my job because I couldn't cope with the grief. The money ran out fast, and I started sinking into debt." She stopped, her breathing quickening as she stared at the floor. "Then just when I thought I had nowhere else to go, someone came along, a friend, or so I thought. He said he could help me, that I just needed to trust him." His voice was shaking now, and Alex felt a knot tighten in his throat. "He used me, Alex. Sold me out, as if I were an object. I didn't know what was happening until I was already trapped in that cycle, working for him, doing things I swore I'd never do in my life." She looked up at Alex, and he saw something he would never forget: shame. "I ran away the first chance I got. I spent nights hiding, afraid they'd find me. I had no money, no one. People look at you in the street, Alex, and it's like you're not human. I got used to being invisible because being seen is worse." She stopped, swallowing back the tears that threatened to burst out, but they flowed freely down her face. Alex didn't try to interrupt her. He just stood there, listening. "You don't know what it's like to feel like nothing, like there's no going back. Because there isn't. No matter what I do now, there will always be that stain, that weight." Alex felt his heart break into 1,000 pieces. He had never heard anything so painful, so brutally honest. He wanted to hug her, to tell her that she was wrong, that there was a way back, but he knew that words wouldn't be enough. "Liz," he said carefully, "none of this was your fault. You did what you could to survive." "Survive?" She laughed again bitterly. "Surviving would be better than that. That's just existing, a shadow of what I was." "Then let's find the Liz you lost," said Alex, his voice firm but full of emotion. Liz stared at him, her eyes full of pain and disbelief. "You're crazy, Alex. Why are you doing this? Why do you care about me?" "Because you were the most incredible person I've ever met," he replied without hesitation. "And because no one deserves to go through this alone." She shook her head, but said no more. Alex realized that she was exhausted, physically and emotionally. He stood up and held out his hand to her. Liz hesitated before taking it, and he helped her to her feet. "Come with me," he said, giving no room for objections. "Where to?" "Somewhere safe. You don't have to sleep on the street tonight." Liz couldn't resist. Maybe it was tiredness, maybe it was something in Alex's voice, but she simply nodded. He took her to a small hotel in the center, a simple but clean and welcoming place. When they arrived, Alex paid for the room and handed Liz the key. "Spend the night here," he said, looking directly into her eyes. "Tomorrow we can talk more if you want. But today, you just need to rest." Liz stood still for a moment, holding the key as if it were a foreign object. Then, finally, she looked at Alex. "Why are you doing this?" she asked again, her voice low, almost a whisper. "Because you deserve a chance to start again," he replied. Liz didn't say anything, but something in her expression softened. She gave a small nod and disappeared through the bedroom door. Alex stood in the hallway for a moment, feeling the weight of what he had just heard. He knew it wouldn't be easy, that Liz still carried a mountain of pain, but he was determined. No matter how long it took, he would be there. The next morning, Alex returned to the hotel. He waited in the lobby, apprehensive. When Liz finally appeared, her hair still damp from a shower and wearing the clean clothes he had left for her, something in him changed. "You came," she said, her voice still hoarse but with a touch of surprise. "I told you I'd be here," replied Alex, smiling slightly. Liz took a deep breath and stared at him. "I don't know where to start," she said honestly. "Then we'll start wherever you want," said Alex. "One step at a time." And for the first time, Liz gave a small smile. It wasn't much, but for Alex, it was a start. The days turned into weeks, and Alex and Liz started seeing each other frequently. At first, the meetings were brief, marked by a delicate tension. Liz still carried an invisible barrier, but little by little she allowed Alex to get closer. He always respected her limits, but never hid his determination to help her. Liz, on the other hand, oscillated between gratitude and shame. There were moments when she would allow traces of her old self to emerge, a brief smile, a short laugh, but then she would return to the cocoon she had built up over the years. One evening, as they walked together through the quiet streets of the city, Alex broke the silence that hung between them. "I want to help you find a way, Liz," he said, his voice low but firm. She stopped walking, looking at him suspiciously. "You're already doing more than you should, Alex." "I don't know why you keep going." "Because I believe in you," he replied, "and because no one can do it alone." Liz looked away, her arms crossed as if she were trying to protect herself. "Believing in me? That's a mistake. I'm not the person you knew." "It doesn't matter who you were or who you think you are now," Alex replied. "What matters is what you can be from now on." Liz was silent for a long moment. Then, as if something inside her had given way, she sighed. "What do you suggest?" "I have a friend," said Alex. "He has a small company, and he's looking for someone for a receptionist position. It's a simple job, but it would be a start." "A job?" Liz repeated, as if the idea was absurd. "Yes," replied Alex softly. "I know it seems like a lot now, but I think it would be good for you. One step at a time." She hesitated, her fingers tightening the sleeves of her old jacket. "What if I screw it up? What if I don't succeed?" "Then we try again," Alex replied without hesitation. "But you won't know until you try." Liz took a deep breath. As much as the idea terrified her, there was something in Alex's voice, in his quiet insistence, that made her want to believe him. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, I can try." The next day marked the beginning of a subtle but significant change. Alex accompanied her to his friend's office, a small graphic design company. The owner, a middle-aged man called Victor, welcomed Liz with a warm but discreet smile. He seemed to understand, perhaps with Alex's help, that Liz was facing something delicate. She started work the following week. The first day was difficult. Every interaction felt like a test, and Liz struggled with the constant feeling of not being enough. But the kindness of Victor and her co-workers helped her feel more comfortable. By the end of the first week, Liz began to feel something she hadn't felt for a long time: purpose. In addition to work, Alex suggested that Liz consider therapy. The idea initially made her uncomfortable, but after a few conversations, she agreed to give it a try. The first few sessions were painful. Talking about what had happened seemed to tear out parts of her that she preferred to keep buried. But little by little, Liz began to understand that the healing process would require her to face what she had been through. One evening, after a particularly difficult session, Liz met Alex in a cafe. He listened patiently as she talked, for the first time, about how therapy was affecting her. "Sometimes, I feel like I'm picking at wounds that will never close," she said, her voice low, as she absent-mindedly fiddled with her coffee cup. "Maybe they won't close completely," replied Alex. "But that doesn't mean you can't find a way to live with them, to use them to strengthen yourself." Liz stared at him for a moment, as if assessing the weight of his words. "You talk as if it's easy." "I know it's not," he replied, "but you're trying. That's already more than a lot of people would do." Over time, Liz began to recover parts of herself that she thought were lost forever. Work gave her a routine, and therapy began to build a foundation where before there had only been rubble. But even so, she still struggled with feelings of inadequacy and guilt. One evening after leaving work, Alex and Liz walked through a quiet park. The trees swayed gently in the wind, and the sky was clear, dotted with stars. "You changed my life," said Liz suddenly, breaking the silence. Alex looked at her, surprised. "I only gave you a push. You did the rest." Liz shook her head, a brief but sad smile appearing on her lips. "I don't know if I could have done it without you." Alex stopped walking, turning to her. "Liz, you would have found a way, maybe in a different way, but you would have." She looked away, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "You're too good, Alex. I don't know if I can repay you for that." "You don't have to repay anything," he said sincerely. "I didn't do this expecting anything in return." Liz took a deep breath, fighting back the wave of emotions that threatened to overflow. "I just want to be someone you can be proud of." "Indeed, I'm already proud of you," Alex replied softly. The words took him by surprise too, because at that moment he realized that, despite everything, he was still in love with Liz. But he knew that this feeling wasn't what mattered now. It wasn't about him, it was about her. Liz looked at him, her eyes full of something Alex couldn't quite decipher. Gratitude, perhaps. Hope, however faint. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice almost inaudible. And for the first time, Liz felt that maybe, just maybe, there was a future for her, one where she could be whole again. Things seemed to start falling into place. Liz was more stable, still fragile, but no longer so lost. Work had given her a foundation, and therapy was slowly helping her to rebuild herself. Alex was still by her side, like an unshakable rock, always there to support and encourage. But as Liz took steps forward, shadows from the past began to emerge, threatening to destroy what they were trying to build. It all started when Caroline, Alex's ex-girlfriend, reappeared at a gala event he was organizing for one of his foundations. Caroline was everything Liz thought she could never be. Sophisticated, impeccable, and with a smile that seemed to hide calculated intentions. She had been a constant presence in Alex's life for years, even after the breakup. And when she noticed how close Alex and Liz were, something inside her stirred, a mixture of jealousy and contempt. Caroline began discreetly, spreading rumors during the event. "I've heard that Alex is helping a woman in trouble," she said in a low voice, but loud enough for the surrounding group to hear. "A tragic story, but you know how dangerous these things can be. People like that never really change." The words echoed quickly, reaching the ears of Alex's family, friends, and even work colleagues. The reaction was immediate and brutal. Phone calls started pouring in, full of veiled concern and disguised judgments. "Alex, you need to think about your reputation," said his sister Rachel over a tense dinner. "That woman, Liz, isn't it? People are talking. They say she has a complicated past." "Complicated?" Alex retorted, his voice firm. "Everyone has a past, Rachel. That doesn't make her a bad person." "You may think so, but the world doesn't see it that way," his father interjected, with the authoritative tone Alex knew so well. "You've built something big, Alex, an empire, and now you're risking it all for someone who doesn't even belong to your circle." The words hit him like punches, but Alex refused to give in. He knew that Liz had fought harder than either of them could imagine. She didn't deserve to be judged for things that were out of her control. But the rumors continued to grow. Caroline stepped up her campaign, even going so far as to share distorted details of Liz's past that she had discovered through dubious contacts. "Do you know," she would say to anyone who would listen, "that she's been involved in dangerous things? There are stories about debts, betrayals. Do you think Alex should really be around someone like that?" When Liz heard the rumors, it was as if all the wounds she had been trying to close were brutally reopened. For days, she avoided Alex, ignoring his messages and refusing to answer them. Finally, he came to her apartment, knocking on the door until Liz hesitantly opened it. "Why are you here, Alex?" she asked, her voice heavy with exhaustion. "Because you left me no choice," he replied, entering before she could stop him. "What's going on, Liz? Why are you pushing me away?" Liz crossed her arms, her face hardening. "You know what they're saying. About me. About you. Don't you think it's time to move on? Save your reputation before I destroy what you've built?" Alex stood still, stunned. He had expected resistance, but not this kind of resignation. "Liz, this is crazy. Nothing they're saying matters. Do you think I care what these people think?" "Maybe you should," she said with a sad smile. "You have a perfect life, Alex. I'm a stain on that life, a memory you should forget." "Don't say that," he replied, his voice boiling with emotion. "You're not a stain, and I'll never forget you." "Why?" Liz exclaimed, her voice rising. "Why do you insist on this? I'm dead weight, Alex. People are right. No matter how hard I try, there will always be something broken in me, something that can't be fixed." Alex took a step forward, his eyes fixed on hers. "You're wrong. You're so much more than what happened to you. And I'm not going to let anyone, not Caroline, not my family, not even you, convince me otherwise." Liz felt tears welling up, but tried to hold them back. She wanted to push him away, but she also wanted to believe his words. "Why do you care so much?" she asked, her voice trembling. Alex took a deep breath. Because I know you, Liz. I know who you really are, and I know that you have the strength to get through this, even if you don't see it yet." She didn't reply, but the silence between them was broken by an involuntary sob that escaped from Liz. Finally, she allowed herself to cry, her shoulders shaking as Alex stayed by her side. Before she could continue, Alex stepped forward and held her face between his hands, his eyes meeting hers with intensity. "Stop," he said softly but firmly. "You're enough. You always have been." Liz tried to pull her face away, but Alex held her. "I still love you, Liz," he said, his voice full of emotion. "I love you despite everything, for everything, no matter what happened. I love who you were and who you're trying to be, and nothing anyone says will change that." Liz remained motionless, his words seeming unbelievable. The tears continued to fall, but this time they weren't just of pain. There was something else there. Relief, hope. Alex pulled her close and wrapped his arms around her. Liz collapsed completely, sobbing against his chest, letting years of shame and fear spill out in tears as he held her tightly, saying nothing more. That night they stayed together. Alex didn't move away for a moment, and Liz, for the first time in years, allowed herself to believe that maybe she wasn't as alone as she thought. The next morning, as the sun was rising, Alex woke up with Liz by his side, her head resting gently on his shoulder. He watched her for a moment, feeling the weight of what they had to face, but determined to fight for her. Later that day, Alex faced his family and friends with unwavering determination. During a tense dinner, he faced Rachel and his father, responding firmly to their criticism. "You don't know Liz," he said, "and frankly, I don't expect you to understand, but I'm not going to abandon her because of rumors or prejudices. She's much more than what happened to her, and if you can't see that, then the problem isn't with her." Caroline, on hearing that Alex had remained by Liz's side, tried to confront him again. "She'll never be enough for you," she said, with venom in her voice. "You're right," replied Alex calmly. "She doesn't have to be, because I'm not with her to fill a void or fulfill an expectation. I'm with her because I believe in her, and that's all that matters." That evening, when he returned to Liz's apartment, she opened the door and welcomed him in with a small smile. There was still doubt and insecurity in her eyes, but there was also something new, a spark of trust. "You've come back," said Liz, almost in surprise. "I'll always come back," replied Alex. And with that he went inside, closing the door behind him, determined to face whatever lay ahead, with Liz by his side. It took Liz days to accept Alex's invitation to move into his mansion. He hadn't pressured her, just suggested it in a gentle way, explaining that he wanted her to have more comfort, more stability. But for Liz, it was a huge step, almost frightening. The idea of sharing his space, of being surrounded by a life that seemed so far removed from her reality, left her in constant internal conflict. But Alex's gentle insistence, coupled with the affection he showed in every gesture, convinced her. One evening, as they sat on the sofa in Liz's small apartment, she finally agreed. "Okay," she said, her voice low, "but only for a while, until I've completely stabilized." Alex smiled, relieved, but noticed the hesitation in her eyes. "No rush," he replied. "You can stay as long as you like. The mansion is big enough for you to have your own space." Moving day came quickly. Liz barely brought any belongings, as she had almost nothing but a few clothes and personal belongings. When the car pulled up in front of the huge mansion, she looked at the luxurious facade with a mixture of admiration and discomfort. The carved iron gate looked like a threshold, a barrier between two worlds that she wasn't sure she should cross. "It's just a house," said Alex, noticing her tension. Liz laughed softly, but there was little lightness in her laugh. "It's not just a house, Alex, it's like a castle." "So you're the queen now," he replied, with a smile that tried to soften the moment. Inside the mansion, Liz felt lost. Everything was impeccable, from the marble on the floor to the sparkle of the chandeliers. There was an opulence she had never experienced, and it only reinforced the feeling that she didn't belong there. The first week was difficult. Liz tried to keep a low profile, almost invisible, but Alex encouraged her to make herself comfortable. He made a point of preparing a room for her, decorated in soft tones and cozy furniture, a space that felt like it was hers and not just an extension of the grandeur of the mansion. However, the stares of the house staff were inescapable. Although Alex had instructed everyone to treat Liz with respect, she could see the unspoken judgment in their gazes. The whispered conversations ceased as soon as she entered a room, but she knew she was the focus of speculation. One morning, while walking down the corridor, Liz overheard parts of a conversation between two maids. "You know who she is, don't you?" "Of course. I hear she has a complicated past." "Just imagine what she must have done to get that." Liz stopped, frozen, her face burning with shame. She wanted to scream, to confront the women, but she didn't have the strength. Instead, she went back to her room and closed the door, trying to choke back the tears. When Alex arrived later, he found Liz curled up on the bed, her eyes red and swollen. He immediately went over and sat down next to her. "What happened?" he asked, worried. Liz shook her head, avoiding his gaze. "You shouldn't be here, Alex. I don't belong here. People know that, and so do I." "Liz," he said, his voice firm but gentle, "you belong wherever you want to be, and I want you here. Forget what other people think. They don't know you. They don't know who you really are." "But I do," she replied, her voice breaking. "And what I know is that I'll never be enough for this world. Never." Alex took a deep breath, trying to contain the frustration he felt at seeing her self-sabotage. He took her hands in his, intertwining their fingers. "You're enough for me," he said, looking her in the eye. "And that's what matters." Alex's words were like a direct blow to Liz's heart. She tried to reply, but the tears flowed before she could say anything. Alex didn't wait. He pulled her into a tight embrace, allowing her to cry against his chest. "I won't give up on you, Liz," he whispered. "I know it's hard, but you don't have to face it alone." The following days brought new challenges. Liz tried to adapt to the routine of the mansion, but tensions rose when Alex's family came to visit unexpectedly. Rachel was the first to arrive, her cold, suspicious gaze falling on Liz as soon as she saw her. "So it's true," said Rachel, as Alex welcomed her into the living room. "You really did bring her here." "She has a name," replied Alex, his voice more cutting than usual. Liz tried to avoid the interaction, but Rachel followed her into the kitchen. "Don't you think you're going too far?" asked Rachel, her voice full of contempt. Liz felt her chest tighten, but answered firmly, even though her voice trembled. "I don't want to cause trouble for Alex. I'm here because he insisted." "He has this thing about wanting to save people," Rachel retorted. "But don't think that will last forever. Alex has a reputation, and eventually he'll realize that you're a burden." Alex appeared in time to hear the last sentence. His eyes burned with anger as he put himself between Liz and her sister. "This has gone far enough," he said. "You have no right to talk to her like that." "Alex, I'm trying to protect you," replied Rachel indignantly. "I don't need your protection," he retorted. "I need you to respect my choices, and Liz is one of them. If you can't do that, maybe you should leave." Rachel left angrily, and Alex turned to Liz, who looked like she was about to fall apart. He held her face between his hands, forcing her to face him. "You're not leaving," he said firmly. "You're part of my life now, Liz. And I'm not going to let anyone take that away from me." Liz nodded, the tears flowing silently. She knew the road would be long and full of challenges, but at that moment, she decided to believe in Alex. And for the first time she felt that maybe there was a place for her in that world. As the months passed, Liz began to find her place in the mansion. The initial coldness of the staff dissolved as they got to know her better. Liz, with her simplicity and genuine desire to help, won over each and every one of them. She chatted with the cooks while helping to wash dishes, asked the gardeners about the plants and, to everyone's surprise, was often seen helping with the simplest tasks, such as organizing the pantry or sweeping the corridors. "She's amazing," Maria, the housekeeper, once commented to Alex. "I never thought anyone could change so much in such a short space of time. She teaches us every day." Deep. These small interactions began to rebuild Liz's confidence, but it was during a walk with Alex that she realized she could do something bigger. They passed an alleyway where a group of homeless people huddled together, trying to protect themselves from the cold. Liz stopped, her eyes fixed on the figures huddled under old blankets. "I can't ignore this," she said, her voice breaking. Alex touched her shoulder. "Then don't ignore it. Let's do something about it." That's how Liz's first social project was born, aimed at sheltering and rehabilitating homeless people. With Alex's help, she managed to raise funds, organize partnerships, and open the first shelter, which offered not only a roof over their heads, but also access to medical care, food, and psychological support. At first, the project was small, but it soon began to gain momentum. Liz, with her personal story and authenticity, became the face of the initiative. Alex, always by her side, supported her in every decision. He took part in food distributions, helped organize events, and even gave talks on how the private sector could collaborate with social causes. The media began to take notice. Television programs reported on the project, and the images of Liz and Alex helping people on the streets touched the hearts of thousands. Liz became a symbol of overcoming, her story of struggle and resilience inspiring many to reevaluate their prejudices and get involved in the cause. "I'm only here today because someone believed in me," Liz said in interviews, "and I want to give that back. I want these people to know that no matter how deep you fall, there's always a chance to start again." The impact of Liz and Alex's work has grown to the point of being recognized by important figures, including the president, who personally received them at an event at the government palace to pay tribute to their initiatives. During the speech, Liz looked at Alex, her eyes full of tears. He held her hand under the table, whispering, "This is just the beginning." Over time, even Alex's family was transformed. Rachel, who had previously been one of Liz's biggest opponents, sought her out to apologize. "I was wrong," said Rachel sincerely. "I didn't see who you really were. You not only changed Alex's life, but the lives of so many people. Please forgive me." Liz, her eyes watering, replied, "There's nothing to forgive. I just hope we can start again." The mansion, which had once seemed like a place of oppression to Liz, became a home full of life. The staff, who had once looked at her with suspicion, now treated her with affection and admiration. Liz was the perfect hostess, organizing meetings to discuss projects and welcoming those who needed help, always with a sincere smile. One special evening, after a very successful fundraising event, Liz and Alex sat in the garden of the mansion, watching the stars. There was a comfortable silence between them, until Liz broke the moment with a shy smile. "Do you remember that day in the park when I said I wanted to change the world?" Alex laughed softly. "I do. You said you were going to build something big, something that really mattered." Liz lowered her gaze, playing with her fingers. "I didn't think it was possible. After everything, I thought I'd lost that part of me." Alex held her hand, his voice heavy with emotion. "You never lost it. You were just asleep, waiting for the right moment to wake up. And now, you're changing the world, Liz. And you're doing it with the most beautiful heart I've ever known." She looked at him, her eyes full of tears that she couldn't hold back. "I couldn't have done it without you, Alex." He shook his head. "You would have found the way. I was just lucky to be here to watch." Liz moved closer, wrapping him in a tight hug. At that moment, the weight of the past seemed to finally dissipate, leaving room only for the present and the future they were building together. Months later, at a ceremony to open another shelter, Liz gave an emotional speech. When she finished, she looked at Alex, who was in the audience. with the look of someone who knew she had found the love and support of a lifetime. And so, between tears and smiles, they continued their journey side by side, proving that even from the darkest situations, a light can be born that can illuminate the world. If this story has touched your heart, remember, we all have the ability to transform lives. Just as Liz found the strength to start again and Alex chose to believe when no one else did, you too can be the change in someone's life. If you've watched this video to the end, leave the name of someone you love in the comments. I'll respond with a heart, and together we'll create a chain of love and gratitude. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. That way, you'll help this message of hope and overcoming to reach even more people.